Hi everyone. I hope all of you are able to hear me. It will be great if people can just confirm in the YouTube chat window and then we'll get started very quickly. So this is going to be about 20-25 minutes session. So we'll talk about the NMAT 22, what exactly happened. I got a chance to take it on day one. So I'll be talking about my experience as well. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask during the session through the YouTube live chat. I hope all of you are able to hear me, just confirming it once again before we get started. Okay, all right. I'm receiving yes response from a lot of people. So I think we are good to go. So let's get started with the session. Okay. So NMAT 22, I'm assuming that a lot of you have already sort of registered and booked your date, etc. In case you haven't, please make sure that you finish off your registration at the earliest. The deadline, I believe, has been extended till 12th October, and the deadline to book your slot is 13th October. So you need to book your slot, whether you're taking it in October, November, December, that is secondary, but you have to book your slot before 13th October. So please keep those dates in mind. Make sure that you complete the registration process and also the application for NMIMS, which is something that you'll have to complete at the earliest too. So let's now start talking about NMAT 22, right? So a couple of things I think have not changed compared to what it was earlier. So if you look at NMAT 21, things haven't changed too much, but then I observed, and as mentors, some of us ended up taking it. We observed that there are some things that people really need to understand this time as to what are the changes. So I'll talk about the major changes that happened, at least in my slot, I experienced that, and there could be some other things that you might see. But let me at least tell you what I saw and what some of us saw. So firstly, adaptive pattern, right? I believe everybody now knows what an adaptive test is. It adapts to how you're performing on the test. So the questions are pulled from a particular set of questions depending on how you're responding. So if you're doing well on the test, which means you're getting a lot of questions correct, you will start facing difficult questions. But if you get a few questions wrong, then you might see the next question to be slightly more easier, right? So the test is going to be adaptive in nature, and that is what it was this year as well. It does not give you any option to skip questions. So you have to answer a question, otherwise you can't really move ahead. There is no question level timer. Please keep that in mind. So if you want to sit on a question for a long time, you can do that. But then, of course, that is not recommended. So you try to finish off questions as early as possible. So the adaptive format of the test implies that the topic-wise breakup that we're going to discuss today might be different. So when I look at my breakup and tell you that, okay, this is what happened in my paper, what you will face on your paper could be a little different. So if I get, let's say, maybe 4 questions of parajumbles, you might have 3 questions of parajumbles. That might happen. Or the difficulty that I'm going to face will be very different compared to what you are going to face, depending on how you have done on the test. If you try to click on the next button, so the interface was very similar to what it was last year or what you see on the official mock as well. And I will definitely encourage people to take the official NMAT mock before they go for the final test, in addition to, of course, the IMS mocks that you have been taking. So if you try to click on the next button, it will show you a message that you must complete answer to this question before you can continue to the next one. Also, you have to make sure that you view all the area of the screen. Otherwise, also it will give you an error that you have not viewed the entire content. Okay, so especially in DI, you have to scroll up and down, or in case of RCs, you have to scroll up and down, making sure that you have seen everything, and then only you can move ahead. And lastly, an option to decide the section attempt order was given, as it has always been the case in the earlier NMATs as well, where you get to choose what order you want to solve the paper in. So you can say, for example, I'm going to do quant, LR, and verbal, or I'm going to do, say, verbal, quant, LR, and so on. So what you get is like a drag and drop thing. So you have 3 section names on the left hand side, then you have blank on the 3 blanks on the right hand side with numbering 1, 2, 3, and you have to drag and drop the subject name, right? So if you want the section name, that is. So if you want to start with the verbal section first, you will have to drag and drop it at the position 1. So that becomes your first section that you start, right? So that is something that you will see on the actual test. And as I said, the official mock of NMAT plus the IMS mocks is something that will help you to prepare for all these things. In terms of test structure, again, I assume that everybody knows now what the test structure has been. Even last year, this was the structure. So 36 questions in each of the sections, a total of 108 questions. Time allotted for language is 28 minutes. For quant, it is 52 minutes. And for LR, it is 40 minutes. When I talk about the individual sections, I'll tell you that it was sort of a struggle to complete some part of the entire test, especially the quant section. I'll talk about it as to how the whole thing happened. So 120 minutes for the entire paper, 108 questions to be attempted. Now let's start with the quantitative skills. And please read the disclaimer at the bottom that the adaptive format of the test means that the topic-wise breakup is going to be different. So different people might face a different distribution in terms of the number of questions from each of these domains. Plus, within each of the domains, they might see a different number of questions asked from different topics. So what you need to look at is you need to take this as one side of the story, but this may not be the exact breakup that you're going to face on your test. Okay, so let me clear that for everybody. So out of 36 questions, majority of it was problem solving. So state questions where you have to solve the question. These were 22 questions out of 36. Compared to last year, a change was that there were only 2 sets of data interpretation. So typically earlier it used to be that even in the last year or the year prior, there used to be 3 sets of data interpretation. This time there were only 2 sets. There was one which was a table and the other one was a bar chart. Unfortunately, both of them were very irritating. So at least in my slot when I took it, both the sets were pretty irritating to calculate. Plus even understanding part of the bar chart of it was a little complicated. And if you have especially seen the NMAT official mock, you would have come across those sets which are very irritating. The reading it itself is painful, and then solving the questions is also painful because they are calculation intensive. The other table that I had, the 4-question DI set that I had, that was still doable, fairly calculation intensive, but doable. But the bar chart one was very, very painful. Data sufficiency, 6 questions. So not a lot of DS questions, but yes, DS as a topic is very, very important. Picking from the topics that you have in problem solving itself. So you're not going to see something which is very different on DS in terms of the topics, but DS as a question type is something which is what you'll have to practice, because there will be at least about 6 questions that you're going to see on your paper. Okay. So I see a question from Yash. Will we be changing the mocks? We'll see if we can make any changes immediately. Ideally, it would not really matter too much because it is still something which is an adaptive test. You might face 3 sets for all we know, right? So you don't know that the breakup that I had will be the same breakup for you guys. So I had 2 DI sets, but maybe somebody faces 3 DI sets. Right now, we are working with a very limited sample. So I ended up taking it on day 1. There were 2 other IMS mentors who took it on day 1. And all of us had 2 sets, right? But then going forward, there could be 3 sets, there could be 2 sets. So we don't know that. And that is like the beauty of the test, that everybody is going to face maybe some things which are very different from each other, right? Now, in terms of the topic composition will not change. The number of questions will change, but the topics will not change. And that is because whatever topics are there in the official guide, they're going to ask those topics. So the questions will come only from those areas. They are not going to ask you anything beyond that. So in modern maths, you had questions from progressions. A fairly irritating question is what I had. One of the questions at least. The second one was fairly straightforward. Probability, not very, very difficult, at least what I faced. But in permutation combination, there was one question which was again slightly irritating. Set theory wasn't difficult, pretty straightforward question. Logarithm question was slightly painful, but then manageable. If you have done logarithms, you should be able to do it. I would encourage all of you to please do logarithms, right? Logarithms is something which is something that has appeared on the NMAT previously. It always appears and you have to do it. You cannot skip logarithms as a topic. Even P&C, probability, progressions, all of these are very, very important topics, because if not 2, maybe you'll see 1 question, right? And for all you know, there could be 3 questions also, right? So the number of questions will change, as I said. But then the topic names, they are not going to change. So in arithmetic, simple interest, compound interest, percentages, time and work, and proportion questions, right? So fairly straightforward arithmetic part of it. But then in SICI, particularly, there were some questions which were a little calculation intensive. So I had to write a lot of things to sort of get to the answer. But again, that thing can change from person to person. But SICI, please do this topic. It's not something that you can skip. Even percentages, because that's an absolute must for your DI. The 8 questions of DI which I had, right? pretty much all of them had some sort of percentage calculation. So this percent more or that percent more, or some absolute value with percentage relation in it. So percentages as a topic is very, very important. Numbers, there were 3 questions from numbers, pretty direct questions, indices search and all the number theory related questions. In algebra, you had quadratic equations and algebraic formulae. So something on the a cube plus b cube, a cube minus b cube application, a square minus ab plus b square, that kind of a thing. Data interpretation, as I've already mentioned a little bit, I had 2 sets, one on bar chart, and there was one which was a table. The table had, I believe, somewhere around 32 values, if I recall correctly, 32 or 36, one of those numbers, calculation intensive. Okay. In data sufficiency, averages, mixtures, allegation, pretty much everything that you see in arithmetic appeared in data sufficiency. The questions on progressions as well. I was kind of stumped by some of the question difficulty, and I really struggled in the quant section. I don't know why. I have taught quant for a really long time, and that is something that I generally bank upon. But then it was a very, very difficult task to complete all the questions within the time that was given, simply because of the data interpretation. So and some of the questions that I saw on problem solving and in data sufficiency, where if you're really trying to find the right answer, you will have to struggle. But if you want to just mark something and move ahead, which you might have to do at a couple of places, because I ended up doing that as well. Please take a very quick decision whether you need to do it. So in one of the DI sets, especially the bar chart one that I had, there were 2 questions which I just randomly marked. I marked C and I moved ahead, because there was no way I could have answered all those questions otherwise. Right? So I tried to complete the paper, which is a more important thing than trying to get every single question correct. Right? So keep that in mind. So moving, there any questions on quant? So I'm just checking the YouTube chat. Clocks and calendars. I didn't have any questions from clocks and calendars, at least in my slot, but I've seen a question from calendars in in the official mock. So maybe it could appear in your this thing. So you never know. I heard some people got time, speed, distance. No, at least I didn't see any questions on geometry or mensuration or time, speed, distance. Okay. My exam is on 12 December. Will it be difficult? Nobody can say that whether your test will be difficult or not. Anything related to quant specifically that you guys have? Score 235 in NMAT free mock. What can I expect on the NMAT? I think a 235 on the free mock is a decent score. But I would encourage you to score higher, of course. Take a retake of it maybe after a couple of more IMS mocks and practicing more questions. Okay. Was it similar to NMAT official mock? Yes. And I will also tell you how much I had scored on the official mocks and then how much I scored in the actual. Okay. For now, let's move ahead to the next section, which is logical reasoning. So in logical reasoning, compared to what we have seen earlier on the NMAT, where the distribution was nearly equal, 18-18 in terms of verbal and non-verbal reasoning, that has changed now. So this is another change that has happened this year, where verbal reasoning dominated the section. So out of 36 questions, nearly 24 questions, at least in my slot, appeared from verbal reasoning. Maybe in your slot, you end up getting, say, 20 or 22. And I don't think any student will sit and actually count how many questions were there from these areas. But then the distribution might change here and there a little bit. But you can say about 2/3 of it is going to be verbal reasoning, and 1/3 of it is going to be non-verbal reasoning. Okay. Distribution can always change. Standard disclaimer applies. So in verbal reasoning, you had all sorts of things: implicit statements, which is assumptions, strong, making an argument strong or weakening an argument, course of action, decision-making kind of questions. So there was something like some particular situation has happened. Now, as like a responsible person, what exactly is the course of action that you take? Questions related to facts and statements. So if 3 things are given to you and these are considered to be facts, which of the statements can be inferred? Right? And again, you will see similar questions on the NMAT official mock as well. Critical reasoning, again, assumptions, inference, conclusions, and so on. Syllogisms, 3 statement syllogisms appeared. So all A's are B's, some B's are C's, all C's are D's kind of questions. 3 statements is what I had, and there were 3 questions on it. They're not very, very difficult. So if you have done syllogism basics, I think you should be able to manage these questions. But the critical reasoning part of it is intense because you need to read also a lot to answer questions. Some of them could be very direct, but some of them might require a little bit of enhanced level of thinking, right? In terms of non-verbal reasoning, 4 questions on matrix arrangement. Very irritating, very irritating. I don't know why they ended up putting something like that, or maybe it was the difficulty that I faced. I think there were 6 dimensions. So some numbers written, they are there in some boxes. The boxes have different colors and they have different kinds of lids, and there is some emblem on the coins that are there. So 5 dimensions, and I think 6 boxes, right? And numerical conditions as well within them. The matrix arrangement set was very intense to solve. So I don't know whether people will face something like this, but at least the one that I saw was very difficult to crack. The sequential output was simple, standard affair that you see on the NMAT official mock 2 or in the IMS mocks that you have seen, but slightly calculation intensive because a lot of things were changing. So step 1 to step 2 to step 3 to step 4, things were changing a lot. So you had to really think first of all what is happening and then extrapolate that to what the question is asking you. So for 4 questions, typically you would need somewhere around maybe 5 to 6 minutes is what I think. But not very difficult to crack. So if you compare between, say, a matrix arrangement that I saw versus a sequential output, the sequential output was a cakewalk compared to the matrix arrangement. And then standalone questions on logical puzzles and numerical puzzles. There were 4 questions. There was one on the position of a person in the row and so on. Relative to that, there was some position given. There was one on some numbers are given and there is a central number which is created from the numbers in the corners. So those questions were there. So that was like the non-verbal reasoning part of the section. Okay. Will there be an analysis for every window is what I see on the chat. Please note that there are no window. There's no window concept, by the way. Okay. So all this window concept, I don't know why people still keep referring to it that way. It's just a single test that happens over a period of October, November, December. There is no concept of windows. There's no such thing as, okay, this window has ended and the next window has started. Okay. I see a question from Saloni. Topics like alphabet series, directions, blood relations, are they there? So they're there on the official mock, which means that you can see some of those questions as well. So alphabet series can definitely make an appearance because I had something to do with how many, so there was a word given and how many pairs of letters in that word have the same number of letters as they are there in the actual alphabet. Right? So again, related to alphabet series in some sense, but not like what is the next term in this series. Okay. Yeah, so let's move ahead. Let's go to the next thing, which is the language skills. Language skills again had 36 questions. Another change is that I saw only 2 passages compared to 3 that I've seen previously. So 2 RCs, it's good in a way. I mean, honestly, it's a good thing because you had to read lesser amount of stuff. But verbal ability questions have gone up. So questions on parajumbles or grammar or questions on vocabulary have increased, right? So RC has gone down, which is a good news for students. But again, as I said, maybe you might end up facing 3 RCs. So take all of this with the sense that it is an adaptive test. The distribution is going to look different for you. Okay, but this is telling you that, okay, that's what happened in my spot. So 2 passages with 4 questions each. I would say the length of passages wasn't too long, somewhere around 6 paragraphs, 5 to 6 paragraphs is what I saw on both of them. Not very difficult to read. Okay, so anybody could have read those passages and answered the questions. Parajumbles, there were 2 kinds of parajumbles. Some had 4 sentences, some had 5 sentences. A couple of them were difficult, but I think 3 or 4 questions were pretty straightforward. There were 6 parajumbles, so make sure that you practice parajumbles really well. Questions and analogies, as always, made an appearance. Some of them were direct, some of them were not. Fill in the blanks, vocab-based questions. Fill in the blanks, preposition-based questions with 3 blanks, which is again a very standard thing on NMAT that you see. And then spotting the error in underlined parts, and there were 6 questions of that. So grammar, vocab, and parajumbles, right? They become very important if you want to crack the language part. Okay. Were there any direct questions on vocab? Yes, they were there, but then they appear as if as part of analogies or they will appear as maybe a direct antonym or synonym question. Okay? Or they could also appear as part of RC. So you never know how the vocab questions or how exactly they will be framed. Okay? Is LR time consuming compared to LS and QA? There's a question from Namra. I particularly found the quantitative part to be extremely time consuming and more difficult to finish compared to the language and the logical reasoning section. Okay. Are analogies vocab based? Yes. So there are a lot of questions on analogies which are vocab based. So if you don't know vocab, your analogies becomes a problem. Okay. What marks can we expect if we are scoring around 220 in IMS mocks? So generally you will expect to score higher. So looking at the data, we can say that if you are scoring somewhere around 220 in IMS mocks, you can potentially get somewhere around a 240 or a 245 in the actual test as well. Okay. So couple of FAQs and then I'll just simply take your questions. What was the sectional or overall difficulty? Right? So everybody asked that question, that what was the difficulty? Now the difficulty is going to be different for different people. Keep that in mind. The test is adaptive and it is going to depend on how you are performing. So just because I saw difficult questions doesn't mean that you will also see similar difficulty problems. You might see lower difficulty or even higher difficulty, depending on how you performed in the previous questions that you have attempted. Right? Now, we have, of course, designed the mocks and kept them on slightly difficult side. You end up scoring generally lower in IMS mocks. Let me again tell you that you will end up scoring more on the actual test if you're able to replicate your performance. So on the IMS mocks, you will see the scaling mechanism that we use puts your score on the slightly lower side, but don't worry about it. You can expect a jump in the actual test. How much that jump could be? That could be somewhere around, say, 20, 25, 30 marks as well. Even 40 marks possible, right? But you never know what exactly that will be. I'll just say that a 220, 225, 230 in IMS mocks is a decent score to have. What happens after the test, right? So test takers, firstly, you see your scorecard immediately, and within a couple of minutes, you also are able to download it from your dashboard. So this was my scorecard. I ended up with a very low score on the quantitative skills, not because I did very badly on the quant. I mean, I did pretty badly on it compared to what I did on language and logical reasoning for sure. But then even last year, we had observed this, that quantitative skills scaling is very harsh. So even if you make a few mistakes, your score tends to come down significantly. So last year also, there were about 4 or 5 IMS mentors, all of them quant faculty, who took it on day one. And the highest that any one of us had was a 93, right? And all of us are like pretty good when it comes to quant. So that happens because the scaling is a problem. So the scaling is on the lower side compared to the scaling or the way it operates for language or logical reasoning. And that is why you will see that even last year, they accounted for that by lowering the quant cutoff. So the quant cutoff last year for NMIMS was 70. And the year prior to that was 76. But from 76, it became 70 simply because of their scaling mechanism. Maybe they changed a little bit or something like that. So fewer people will be able to go beyond, say, maybe an 85 or a 90 and so on. Okay. If you come across anybody who has got very high, maybe a 90 plus in quant, I think that will be interesting to see. We'll try to see if we can gather some of the scorecards of students as we go along in this journey to see how people are performing on the test. Language, as I said, the scaling is something which is much better compared to quant. Even for logical, it is better compared to quant. So that's what I had. And I had taken the official mock, right? I took the first official mock and a retake of that. And in both of them, I ended up scoring very close to 280. So whatever you score on the official mock, generally it's a very good indicator of what can happen on the final thing. Of course, it can go down, it can come down. It can go up, it can come down. That depends on your performance. But then the official mock is a very good thing to have a look at, right? And please keep in mind that NMIMS is going to accept only the first attempt. So make sure that you take your first attempt when you're fully prepared, give it your best, and make sure that you get a good score, right? Cutoff last year was 232 for the NMIMS Mumbai campus. The year prior, it was 235. I don't see cutoff to be changing too much, assuming the difficulty level remains like this. Of course, it's very early to talk about it because this is like the second day since the test has started. We'll wait for some time, we'll see student scores, and then we'll maybe talk a little bit more on the what the cutoffs will be. Yesterday, I have got reports of 2 student scores, one at 265, the other at 269. If anybody has come across higher score in yesterday and today, please, you can put it in the chat window. It will be interesting to see that as well. So I have a question. I'll be taking the questions now from you guys because we're done with the presentation that I had. There's a question from TM: in which order did you attempt the test? So I follow the same order every time. I do quant first, then I do LR, and then I do language. But you do whatever you find the most comfortable thing to do. Okay. There's no right or wrong about it. Whatever works for you, you do that. What are the correct attempts that we should have? The question from Ayush. Ayush, nobody will be able to answer that question, honestly. So I'm also going to write a detailed article on my official mock attempts. I'll give you how I performed on them in each of the sections. That might give you some hint, but there isn't much to decipher, honestly, because it's very, very different. The scaling, you can't predict the scaling. So you can't say that, okay, I'll get only 5 questions incorrect and I'll have a high score. Because the questions that you have answered, what is the difficulty of them and what is the differential marking on them, that matters. So you will not be able to say how many questions you should do correctly. How much plus minus score can we expect in actual NMAT compared to official NMAT mock? A little difficult to say, but at least on the higher side, the scaling is very, very similar to what you would eventually have. So I think I took the official mock. The first attempt I got a 279, and then I think got a 283 or something like that. The final one I had a 284. Even last year, I think on the official mock I had a 283. Final turned out to be a 281. So that mock is pretty interesting, and the scaling, the overall score that you get is like a very good indicator at least. While taking NMAT mocks on the IMS portal, I can't go back to RC to recall while giving answers to questions. So is this the rule in actual NMAT exam too? You can see the RC, right? So throughout the thing, you can see the reading comprehension passage, and then you can answer the questions. Once you have answered a question, you can't go back. Question from Moin: how quickly should you decide if you should solve or skip? The decision has to be very, very quick, and you cannot skip a question. You have to mark something, then only you move ahead. Right? So if you're not planning to solve something, you at least have to make some sort of an intelligent guess as to what the answer could be and move on. As I said, I had to do it for 2 questions in data interpretation. I didn't solve them, just marked C as the answer and moved on. Right? Okay. Will the IMS mocks be updated according to new pattern? As I've already said, there isn't much to update because you can see more RCs in your slot, right? You can see maybe more DI sets. What I'm telling you is something that 2 of us, so me and another mentor, both of us ended up taking it yesterday, what we experienced, right? Maybe going forward, things can be different. But if we have more reports of people, all of them are facing 2 RCs, we'll see if anything can be done. But otherwise, lower number of RCs is actually a good thing for students. So I think everybody should be happy that you're going to see only 2 RCs on the final test. Do you have decision-making questions? Yes, they appear as part of the CR part or direct decision-making under the logical reasoning section. Not a lot of questions. As we saw, the numbers are single-digit numbers. How much does a score of 220 on the official NMAT mock translate to the actual exam? It would be closer to 220. Maybe it could be higher, could be lower. See, when you look at the official NMAT mock, you can take a retake of that. So I would suggest that if you've taken the NMAT official mock first time, prepare for a few more days, right? And closer to your exam date, take the retake of that test and then see how much you score in that. So just 220 right now, I don't know whether I'll be able to say how much it will finally become. But that's what you have at this point of time. Okay, it can always change going forward. Are there any TETA questions? No, please have a look at the format. There are no TETA and other types of questions. All of it is MCQs. Ideal time to take the official mock. Ideal time to take the official mock is like the first can be taken as early as possible so that you get to know how much it is. But then the second attempt of it can happen closer to the exam date. Janvi is saying if you have scored 84, then how are we supposed to score? You can always score more, by the way. That's why I said that if people have scored higher, I think please share your scores, etc. Because last year, I didn't see a lot of people scoring above 93. Last year, I had a 93 on Quant, which itself was a downgrade from what I have done on the Quant earlier. And it's not that my Quant has worsened over the years. So it's just pure scaling that they have, which is, I don't know how exactly it works, but it pulls down your score for some reason. So, and don't worry, if let's say everybody scores on the lower side, right? They adjust the cutoffs. So last year, NMIMS Mumbai had Quant cutoff at 76. Last year it became 70. So this year, let's say Quant becomes difficult for everybody. The cutoff might still come down. So you never know, and of course things will fall in place. Because ultimately what matters is you clear the cutoff. Right? You don't have to be like somebody who nails the entire Quant section. How many RCs did I face in the official mock? I don't remember. I will write a detailed article, as I said. I don't remember the exact bifurcation, but I'll cover it in my article on the Cracking CET blog. We'll share the link with all of you. Okay. What is the suggestion on ordering of the sections? I will say that you choose what you do, what you like to do. As I said, I do Quant, LR, Bubble for a reason. Quant I start with because I'm generally fresh and make fewer mistakes in the beginning. Language, I think even when I'm tired, I can handle language section. But if I reverse the order, it will become a problem for me. I'll start making more errors. So that's how it works for me. But somebody might have a completely different order. That's fine. See, ultimately, you have to do what works for you rather than doing something that works for me. Okay. Sectional NMAT official marks is 77, 80, 78. Where can I improve in the next 2 months? So I think you need improvement across. If you're scoring, say, 70 to 80 in all the 3 sections, there's no one particular area that I can pick, at least from the scores that you have shared. Right? Where can you practice fonts for NMAT? IMS material. So IMS material covers pretty much all the question types that you're going to face. Right? So it's not like you're going to see something very different on the actual thing. It's just that you need practice because especially the DI part is calculation intensive. So I will suggest that you do a lot of calculation practice itself, right? So doing a lot of ballparking, trying to figure out approximately what is the percentage increase or decrease and so on. In a lot of cases, you'll have to even calculate exact things. And that is what made it very, very painful yesterday. Is there a disadvantage or negatives in leaving out questions? So if there are questions at the end that are remaining that you have not been able to answer, your score sort of factors that in. So let's say if you're unable to complete 5 questions, of course, your score is going to go down. How much does it go down because of that? We don't know. But if you're not able to complete all the questions in the section, the score definitely takes a hit because of it. I'm preparing for CAT, but for NMAT, what is the extra syllabus? So you saw the things that we spoke about, right? The topics. So critical reasoning. I would say that IMS module 5 is something that you look at as the first thing, and then take the NMAT official mock and the IMS mocks of NMAT, which will give you an indication of what topics you need to prepare. Other NMIMS cutoffs will be lower than Mumbai, right? Yeah, Arnav, other campuses are always lower. We have done a session on how to crack NMAT, in which I have shared cutoffs of last year and last to last year too. And I will also try to link that in my article that I'm planning to write. Hopefully, I'll upload it tomorrow or day after. I'll give you a link to the 2022, as in the last year and the year prior cutoffs. Can I tell more about the DI set? I can only say that it was painful to understand and to solve. I'll just encourage people to do more and more intense calculation practice. That's the only recommendation that I have. Do I have to go through all 5 modules of Catapult for NMAT? If you're a CAT aspirant, then obviously you have to do all the modules of the Catapult program. But then if you're somebody who is like a specific NMAT aspirant, do only the topics that appear on the NMAT. Is preparing for CAT enough for NMAT? Mostly yes, with the exception of some of the topics that we spoke about, critical reasoning, and things such as vocabulary, because that doesn't appear on the CAT. Grammar doesn't appear on the CAT. So those things you'll have to prepare for separately. Okay. If you don't know the answer, which option should we select? Oh, that's whatever you see is possibly the best fit, you go with that. I don't know about the SD Bocconi cutoff, so I'll not be able to comment on it. I don't have like a ready-made data right now. Is cutoff clearing enough to get a call from NMIMS? Yes, but the higher you score, the better it is, because NMIMS has higher weightage on the written test score. So if you have a higher NMAT score, it becomes easier for you to convert eventually. Did I take the exam at home or at the center? I took it at the test center. All of you, just a simple request, please don't copy paste the same question again and again. It becomes very distracting, first of all, and I might not be able to answer some of the relevant questions otherwise. I took the exam at the test center. I encourage people to take it always from the test center, because you don't have to worry about internet connection or electricity and those parameters. But if it is not possible to get a test center slot, and you have stable internet and electricity, you can always take it from home as well. Okay. How much was I scoring in IMS NMAT Mocks? So this year I didn't have a lot of time to take any mocks as such. It was only last year that I had taken some of the IMS mocks, and I took the official mocks, official paid mocks, and all of that to sort of like really take it as an aspirant. Last year I had taken, I think, only one official mock, and this year I took the official mock and a retake of that on the 8th and the 9th respectively. So 8th I took the official mock, on the 9th I took a retake of it, and 10th I faced the test, and that's it. Right? So that's like the end of story for me with respect to this year's NMAT. Without preparing for the non-CAT topics, we can take the official mock. How many times can we take the retake of it? It allows only one retake. So you can take the NMAT official mock one attempt and then take a retake of it, but only once. Does the test difficulty change with time? Can't really say. So it's like a theory that nobody has proven yet. People say that it becomes difficult, but it's an adaptive test ultimately. So all of you, depending on how you perform in your individual set of questions that you get, you're going to get the next set of questions. So I don't really see any merit in saying that, okay, it starts becoming more difficult as the days pass by. What was the overall accuracy for a good score? I don't know. So that's why I said I'll write a detailed article. I'm going to also review the official mock one and its retake, because the two, I had like a very different score composition in the two, especially I think in the quant. In one of them I did well, in the other one I did not. So you never know how the eventual scaling works, but I'll write a review of it. In general, quant was difficult than last year. Yes, I personally found quant to be slightly more difficult than last year. Last year, at least, I was able to do the entire thing with like 2 minutes to go, I guess. I had a 93 that time. But this time I had to struggle. As I said, 2 questions of a DI set I just randomly marked. Okay. How to deal with RCs? NMAT RCs are not very, very painful to read. So they are much lower in terms of the difficulty if you compare it with CAT, for example. So I don't think it should be like a very big problem. Just give it a nice read first time, and I think you should be able to answer most of the questions. Okay, but then practicing mocks, and that's like the most important thing. Okay. Test day formalities. I think at my center, at least, again, it can vary from centers to center. They asked us to keep everything outside. You are only allowed to take a transparent water bottle inside. We were not allowed to take the pen. Identity proofs are allowed. Electronic devices not allowed. And clear water bottle, as I said, is allowed. Then they give us 2 rough sheets to begin with, and they gave us a pen. I ended up taking 2 more rough sheets. So 4 A4 size sheets is what I ended up using. I didn't use it entirely. I believe I ended up using 3.5, something like that. But rough sheets is not really a constraint, so you can always ask for more. But at least at my center, they gave us, the quality of the rough sheets was not that great, by the way. It was like a very cheap material when it comes to the paper, but a little irritating. And the ball pen was okay. They gave us the ball pen, but at some of the centers, maybe they allow you to use your own pen, etc. How to go about analogies if vocab is not good? Technically, it cannot be an excuse, right? So see, analogies, because they have an element of vocab, you need to do vocab to get better at analogies. The other thing is, of course, elimination. So let's say you spot that the words that are given to you are synonyms. Now, by elimination, you can maybe eliminate the ones that are antonyms, right? Or the ones that are irrelevant, but you will still need vocab to sort of get there. TM has asked in which order did I attempt the paper. As I've always done, Quant, LR, and then language. Please do what you think is appropriate for you. How much time to give for one RC? Somewhere around 5 minutes. 4 to 5 minutes is what you will need. Cutoff for other campuses. I don't remember all of them right now because there are so many campuses. As I said, I will write an article. We will ensure that it reaches to you. We'll give a link in the description of this once the article is published. We'll also put it on Telegram channel, etc. In that article, I will cover all the cutoffs, but they have already been covered in the how to crack NMAT session, which we had done a few days back. You will see it on the IMS channel itself. Was the test center completely quiet? Yeah, the test center was not a problem this time, at least. But I was surprised to see a lot of people taking it on day one. We have always told people not to take it on day one simply because of, say, technical glitches, or in general, because NMIMS is taking only one attempt. Why don't you wait and take it only when you're confident, right? Because after the test, I saw some people discussing their scores, and people were talking about 191, 195, 196, and all of that. And I was very surprised why would these people even turn up on day one, right? So please book a slot right now, but book it on a date by which you will be confident of your preparation. There's no on-screen calculator, so what is the best way to increase overall speed? You have to do your squares, reciprocals, percentages, all those things very, very well. Tables you should be very, very good at, because a lot of multiplication and division calculations were involved, and percentage increase, decrease calculations were involved. So every day I'll take out about 15-20 minutes to practice my calculations itself. Can I share some of the quant questions? I'm not allowed to share questions because signed the non-disclosure agreement, of course. So we cannot share the exact question, but then if you have taken all the official mocks and the IMS mocks, I think you know what to expect. Last year cutoffs, 232 overall, 17 quant. I don't remember the other, but I will give you guys a link from where you can access it. Okay. All right, I think in the interest of time, we'll have to stop the session here. I hope that this has helped you and given you a nice overview of what all happened. As I said, there are a lot of things that I've not spoken about, such as my test day experience, irritating things, positive things, all that stuff. I will write a detailed article on this. It will possibly take me like a nice half day to write it itself. But let me write that down. Please go through it. You will find my last year and the year prior experience as well on the same blog. Make sure that you go through that article and subscribe to the blog. Okay. As I said, we have covered the cutoffs and how to crack subject-wise discussion in a how to crack NMAT session, which is available on the YouTube channel. Okay. So, all right, I think that's it from my side. Thank you so much for joining. If you guys have any questions that I have not been able to answer in the stream today, leave it as a comment and I will get back. Okay. So if you have anything, feel free to put it as a comment on this video and I will answer your questions. Thanks everyone for joining. Wish all of you all the best for the upcoming test season.